case there's an echo, welcome into State of the Nation. It is April 13th. It is exactly 24 hours since the NHL trade deadline hit. And we now know sort of with certainty what the Oilers roster is going to look like. I'm Tyler Remchuk. You got Nation Dan, you got Zach, you got Josh Park as well joining us on the stream like we do every Tuesday. And it was fun for a month and a half to speculate about the trade deadline, go through the best case scenarios, what's going to happen, are they going to get Rickard Rakell, what's the market for Taylor Hall? And now we kind of have the answers, so we get to recap a little bit here. Let's start. I want to go around the league at one point. Yeah, okay, let's go around the league because we're going to get sidetracked with the Oilers shit, and that is going to dominate this conversation, obviously. But I'll come to you first, Zach. Give me a winner and a loser from deadline day.
I mean, I think a winner's got to be the Boston Bruins, right? They're picking up the bell of the trade deadline ball in Taylor Hall here. So he's a great player. He's going to make the team better, help their offense, and push them closer towards the Stanley Cup. A loser from the deadline, I don't know if I necessarily have like anybody that really jumps out to me. I mean, I think Washington maybe got a little fleeced by the Detroit Red Wings, but I wouldn't necessarily call them a loser because I still think Mantha's a great player who projects to be a very, very good top six winger in the future. But yeah, I don't know. That would kind of be my answer.
Nation Dan, what did you say?
Well, my dogs were barking there. I apologize for that. To me, I think the big winners of yesterday, and I guess we start calling it a trade deadline week, especially in this pandemic season,
yeah, that's fair.
Has to be the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those two teams, both in cap hell, quote unquote, were able to figure it out and make some transactions. They had to include some third teams into the mix to be able to make that money work, but they went out and got players that filled the spots that they needed to fill. We saw it with Tampa Bay last year at the trade deadline. Good teams make subtle tweaks to become the competitive Stanley Cup contenders that they want to be. And Tampa and Toronto did that. I really, as much as I hate to say Toronto did a good job, Nick Foligno is a really good pickup for them. For me, so those are the two winners. The loser for me, I don't know. I feel like Florida paying more for Sam Bennett than Boston paid for Taylor Hall makes them kind of, for a team that is in the mix at the top of their division, to not be able to kind of put themselves over the top like their division rival Tampa Bay Lightning did. I look at them and I say that was too much to pay for a guy in Sam Bennett that, is a good role player, but maybe not Taylor Hall worthy.
Florida made the overpay of the day, in my opinion. The Leafs gave up a lot for Nick Foligno, and they probably overpaid, but we debated Frank and Gregor debated this on the DFO Rundown yesterday. If you are convinced Nick Foligno is the perfect fit for you, is it an overpay, right? Like, if you think you got your guy in the final piece, how can you argue with the price? And now it's just a matter of will it work or not. Before I get to my winners and losers, Josh, what do you say?
I'll start with my loser. I think the Carolina Hurricanes kind of staying stagnant yesterday might kind of get them in a bad spot. They're a great team. They're competing in a tough division. And it seemed like all the other teams in their division kind of went out and added the pieces that they needed to compete in what is one of the strongest divisions in the NHL this year. So I would classify the Carolina Hurricanes as probably one of my losers. And then I'm not going to call them my winner, but I'm going to call them a team that maybe is catching a little bit more heat than they should be. And it's actually the Washington Capitals. I think they went out and they got their guy in Anthony Mantha. He's a piece that's going to be a good addition to their lineup today. And that's not saying that Jacob Vrana isn't a player that, is crucial in their lineup. But, you look at that first round pick that they gave up, and realistically, considering how good the Washington Capitals are, that's going to be a bottom late 20s pick. So are you necessarily losing a guy that's going to be a buster in the future? Probably not. So, I think the Caps kind of realize that their window's closing here. Ovechkin's not getting any younger. That core group that they have here, some of those deals are expiring here. So I think they realize, they kind of get one more kick at the can. So, I like the Capitals, and I like that deal that they had to go out and get Mantha.
Yeah, they felt like they needed a shakeup. I'm not convinced they got the best player in the deal. I credit Detroit for getting the haul that they did and getting a good young player in it as well. I'm going to agree with you, Josh. I think the Canes are the losers, man. Like Florida, They overpaid for Sam Bennett. That's a mistake. But they went out and got a guy who's shown he can perform in the playoffs. They signed Gusev, who is a lottery ticket at best. They went out and got Brandon Montour. Like, Florida made moves. Tampa Bay is a force to be reckoned with now. They got the best defenseman that was available on the market. Nikita Kucherov's coming back for the playoffs. Like, Tampa did a great job as well getting Savard. They look primed for another run to the Cup. So my loser is going to be Carolina, just because I don't think they should have sat as still as they did. I mean, they didn't really make a move at all other than trading out Hayden Fleury. My winner for the day, this one's a little bit more tough for me, but I'm actually going to say it is Detroit. Like, I think they kept a good piece in their top 6, and I think the Red Wings did a great job. You had to take on some extra money in Richard Panik, but you got a first and a second round pick. And I think when you're a rebuilding team, setting yourself up well at the deadline and sort of making these spur of the moment moves that get you a lot of assets back is really important. And I think the Red Wings set themselves up rather nicely. We're live on Twitter. We're live on Twitch. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Have your say. Let us know who your winners and losers are from the deadline. Maybe you think Ken Holland was the big loser of the NHL trade deadline. I certainly don't. But let's go around the horn here, and everyone can give out sort of their grade for Ken Holland. And actually, I'll start with you, Zach.
I'm going to go out and give Ken Holland a C, maybe a C minus. Okay. He didn't do anything special. He went out and added a good left shot defenseman who should help stop the bleeding on the Oilers' back end. Kulikov's a good defenseman. You know, he is what he is. He's a shutdown kind of a guy. He's going to be an upgrade over Chris Russell. He's going to be an upgrade over William Lagesson. And he's actually going to be able to eat into Darnell Nurse's minutes a little bit and do it with better results, I think, than someone like Chris Russell. So, you know, I think it was a bit of a loss not going out and adding anything to the top 9. The Oilers are lacking depth on the second line and third line right now, and they got no secondary scoring. So, you know, to me, I don't know if it was all that great of a deadline at all, because the Oilers got passed by Toronto and Winnipeg and Montreal, who all made more impactful moves to their organizations over the last number of weeks. So I think what this deadline really tells me is that, you know, I don't know if Ken Holland sees this team as a team that's ready to make a serious run at it right now. You know, if he felt the Oilers were ready to be the team to come out of the North Division, I think he would have pushed his chips in a little bit more on a guy like Taylor Hall or Rickard Rakell right now, rather than in the offseason. I
agree with that. The one thing I will say, I don't think, what did Winnipeg do unless, like, they got Ben, who's like, sort up some defense. I mean, again, it's not a big needle pusher, right? But again, Jordy Ben's a solid, 6'7" defenseman, right? So I would say the Oilers got a better D-man though.
That's true. Yeah. So maybe Winnipeg isn't a team that necessarily passed by Edmonton. Maybe they were as stagnant as the Oilers were, but nonetheless, they're still going out and making the moves to try and better their roster in the ways that they need it.
Josh, what grade do you give Ken Holland?
If you would have asked me on Sunday night or yesterday afternoon, I would have said an F minus, because, from a fan standpoint, I was fired up. We essentially went out and did the most boring thing possible you can do on deadline day, which has got a depth defenseman on the left side that is just like a solid stay-at-home defenseman. As a fan, you're like, that's freaking boring. Like, let's go out and let's get our guy. Like, let's take a run at it this year. But, you take a step back and you look at it from kind of a more logical perspective, and you say, you look at a team like Toronto, and I'm not even going to look at Winnipeg, but you think, yes, the Oilers have a strong team this year, and yes, when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in your lineup, like, you should be going for it every year. But at the same time, it's kind of it was a tough spot for Ken Holland to be in, because they're going to have so much cap space that clears up this offseason, and really it's going to be kind of a reset for the Edmonton Oilers come this summer. And they're going to have a lot of money off the books that they're going to have a lot of room to play with. And, whether that's signing one of those big UFAs that's going to be an impact in the top 6, or whether it's, shoring up your goaltending or getting that more of a solid guy in your second pairing on the back end, So, from a fan perspective, you wish you would have went out and made the big splash. You wish you would have got a guy like Taylor Hall or Rickard Rakell, but, you look at our assets and I don't necessarily think we had all that much to give up. And, you look at this offseason, it's going to be a reset. Ken Holland said yesterday they hope to be buyers next year, which, I freaking hope they hope to be buyers next year. So, I'll give him a B. I'll give him a B, because I understand, from a general manager perspective, why maybe this year wasn't the year to go out and sell the farm. But at the same time, as a fan, you wish they got Taylor Hall. I'm a Taylor Hall fan, though, so it's all.
I'm going to come right in between you guys, and I'm going to say C+. Like, a little disappointing. If you would have gone out and gotten a depth forward, I would have been like, okay, like 2 moves, you shored up some depth, I would have been a little bit happier. I'm not sure if defense was a huge priority, but I like the move to get Kulikov, so I'll say C+. Dan, what say you?
Well, I think that your guys' grade is pretty astute. I would say probably a B minus, just to be a little bit different, but exactly the same. But for me, it's their moves. Their deadline was this offseason. They went and got Tyson Barrie, who's been a pretty good bet. They went and bet on Tyler Ennis, who was a guy that they brought in at the deadline last year, and they just kept him here for good value. And that one hasn't necessarily worked out yet, but it could continue to work out, and they're going to keep trying. Kyle Turris was another gamble that they made. They lost out on that one. But I think within the organization, there is some hope, that Haas and Kara can step up into that role. And for me, Holland has a team here that he's created and is the second best team in the division right now as it stands. So go ahead, make some noise in the playoffs, and I still believe that in any 7-game set against any of the teams in the North that are going to be in the playoffs, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Montreal, this team competes, and this team goes to a 7th game with all those teams at least. So I'm happy with it, and Josh kind of alluded to it. This summer is another big, time in this organization where we can make some moves and transactions to try and create a team around those two guys. But you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs. You've got Mike Smith playing the way that he's playing right now, hopefully going into the playoffs. You got Darnell Nurse having a Darnell Norris kind of season. Anything can happen. Again, you'd love to see a tweak here and there, but this team is a good team without the transaction that they did yesterday. They're better for Kulikov being on this team, and you go forward and you make some noise in the playoffs, and you show Ken Holland that you can do it without a bunch of help from the outside in.
Even if you went out and got, and this is incredibly unfair to Mike Smith, but even if you went out and got Taylor Hall and made a big splash, you'd still be relying on the 39-year-old goalie in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who didn't do it in the playoffs last year. And Mike Smith's having a great year. He's a fantastic story. And I feel bad for bringing this up, but there's a part of the fan side of me that goes, I'm nervous about him. I just am. I think come playoff time, I'm not going to be incredibly stunned if he has a stinky game or two. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but Josh, you agree with me?
Yeah, I agree. It's so tough because, I've talked to Jay a little bit about this. What do you do in this offseason? You're not going to be able to get Mikko Koskman's money off the books likely. And are you going to re-sign Mike Smith? You're probably not going to be able to because you're going to want to go out and get a 1A. So it's so tough. I don't know. It's, yeah.
Devin
It's
Dubnyk,
going to
baby.
be a crapshoot. It's going to be a crapshoot in the playoffs.
If they sign Devin Dubnyk, I'm done.
I hear what you guys are saying, but I think that we have to remember too that Mikko Koskinen has been playing well in relief of Schmidt now, right? Schmidt. But there's a Schmitty mix. But yeah, so I think that yes, the fears are warranted because we saw it. We literally saw it with Chicago. But I hope that Smith and Koskinen both take that experience and figure it out this year. We won't have to face a Chicago in the first round. We're playing teams that we've seen all season and that Smith has beaten all season. So, except for maybe Toronto, but yeah, I just think that this team wasn't a Taylor Hall away from being a Stanley Cup favorite, and so for Ken Holland to go out and use that first round pick or a smattering of second round picks, he has to be able to say that this is a Stanley Cup contender team, and I don't think that he could match the arms race that Toronto went through and created. So yeah, I think you just go ahead and you make some noise and we see what this squad can do together playing at their best.
Yeah, I really like the point that Dangle Dump 94 made on the Twitch chat, which was this is the last year we should not be going all in. He adds, look at our division next year. That's when we make noise. Josh, you brought up the money they're going to have to spend this offseason, and their division next year is Calgary, who might be going into a bit of a retooling this offseason themselves. Vancouver, I don't have a lot of faith in the Vancouver Canucks. LA, meh. San Jose, meh. Anaheim, meh. Okay, Vegas is good, and let's be real. The Seattle Kraken, are we expecting them to be Vegas 2.0? I'm personally not. So their division next year could be pretty bad, and next year could be a really good chance. There's no excuses going forward anymore. I'm making excuses for Ken Holland right now, but this is the mark it down. This is the last day and last time I'm going to make excuses for Ken Holland, because after this, after year 2 at the helm of this organization with the 2 players you have, there's no more I'm handcuffed from the previous regime or we're building a sustainable winner. From this point going forward for me, Ken Holland's got to put the pedal to the fucking floor. This was his last day, his last deadline to say, I'm taking the patient approach. Do you agree with that, Zach or Josh?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, I'll go. Sorry. I was just going to say, Tyler, the point you just brought up, I talked to my brother-in-law about this last night, is that, the division that the Oilers are going to be in next year, realistically, if you look at it top to bottom, is Vegas the only team in that division that you look at and realistically are like, that is where we could have issues? Because, at Calgary, I think realistically, they're probably going into a retooling right now. And Kraken definitely aren't going to be what the Vegas Golden Knights were. And other than that, the California road swing, what used to be a gauntlet, that's not it anymore.
Yeah.
Those teams aren't that strong out on the Pacific Coast. So, I don't want to blow it up too much, but I would say that this offseason coming up for the Edmonton Oilers, and let me know if you guys agree, this offseason coming up for the Oilers is probably going to be one of the most important off seasons in team history, because this offseason is going to set you up for what's going to be the next 7 to 8 years with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. I honestly think this upcoming offseason is the most important one in the last, 20 years since they got McDavid, maybe.
Yeah.
I just think the thing for me with the Kraken is that everybody keeps saying that there's no way that the GMs will get fooled like they did against Vegas, and we say that about GMs almost every year, that these GMs aren't going to get fooled by the free agent pool, or these GMs aren't going to get fooled by the trade deadline. And here we are, we're talking about the Washington Capitals giving up all those assets for a guy that is basically the same as the player that they sent the other way. So I don't know. I believe that the Kraken won't be as good as Vegas. Like, we're not talking Stanley Cup finals for the Kraken, but I do think that we should expect to see some pushback from that team. I could see an Ottawa Senators kind of style of, the way that the Senators have played the rest of our division this year, where they're challenging, each of those teams night in and night out. We could see that with the Kraken. So I wouldn't mark them as a free bingo spot on the card just yet, but
shout out Eric
I do
Francis.
agree that yes, that at least we're looking at a top 3 team already, and that's without making any moves as is. So yeah, this is the off season of reckoning for Ken Holland, and I think we should be excited about that. And honestly, this team will still make noise in the playoffs. This team, you watch them against the Jets, you watch them against the Habs. They've shown some troubling signs, but they've also beaten those teams. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. They just have to bring their top game against Toronto, and they'll be able to compete in that series too. Toronto went out and got another goalie, which can't be a good mental thing for Jack Campbell. It's like, hey man, we've got 3 goalies that we could take you out of the game for if you start to falter. And yes, he's had a great start to the year, but I don't imagine that Jack Campbell is going to win out the rest of the season. And so the team is going to have some turmoil there still going forward. So I don't know. It's just I don't see the Toronto Maple Leafs as the mountain that people are kind of making them out to be. I think this Oilers team can beat them.
I think every series is probably a coin flip. And Zach, you were the one who a couple weeks ago now brought up that you think the Winnipeg Jets were probably the best matchup for the Oilers in the first round after deadline day. Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, you see what happened against Montreal with Edmonton the last couple of weeks here. The Oilers kind of struggled to play against them, right? The Oilers as a whole, their game is not trending in the greatest direction right now. And now, of course, that has to do with the massive road trip out east and then the games getting canceled and that entire shit show that the team's have been put through over the last couple of weeks. They've really gone through a bit of a gauntlet here. So now the guys have had a chance to get some rest this week here. Hopefully they play Friday against Vancouver, so long as everything goes well there with COVID. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I don't like any of the matchups now in the North Division, to be honest, really. I mean, Edmonton struggled against Montreal. Montreal has outworked them in pretty much every single game that they've played. Winnipeg is a really, really good team. They're a really deep team. I really like the moves that Toronto made. Kyle Dubas said yesterday the move to bring in Riddick was really to kind of shore up the goaltending spot and to make sure that they didn't have to rush Freddie Anderson back. So it sounds like they're ready to shut him down for the regular season. and let Riddick come in and take some of the pressure off Jack Campbell, which I think is a shrewd move because Michael Hutchinson, he's not winning the hockey games, right? So, it's going to be difficult for the Oilers, I think. Do I think they'll compete? Do I think that they have a chance to win a round? Absolutely, I do. It's the playoffs, and they got to the two best players in the entire NHL in McDavid and Draisaitl. So, I think that's why I'm a little hesitant to say, oh yeah, well, sitting on the hands was a great move right now, because at the end of the day, the Oilers could have been a lot better team if they went out and made that move to add some depth scoring in the top. So, I think that would have pushed them a little closer to being a team that can really, really make some noise instead of just, kind of eking into the playoffs. And, it kind of feels to me like it's just accepting mediocrity and saying that, okay, well, this is probably not the year right now, but hey, there's always next year. And it just seems like the same mindset that the organization has had for the last 15, 20 years next year's the year. Next year's the year we're going all in. It gets frustrating and gets tiresome as people who have been fans of the team and cover the team. But so, I don't disagree. I totally see the value in not, overselling and getting rid of all of these other assets that the team has. But, I think Edmonton had a real chance to make themselves a lot better here. And I think it was a missed opportunity.
But we sit back here as fans, and I'm not saying it's you necessarily, Zach, but like the crew of people that are not happy with Holland's deadline, you sit here and do those people look back at last year's deadline and say, yeah, that was an awesome try, and it just didn't work out? And I know you do, but I don't think some people feel that way. I think some people look back at that deadline now and they're like, well, what an idiot he was to give up 2 assets for a player that he lost. There's that pandemic that just kind of got thrown into there. And so for me, when Holland looks at this team, and I think Cam wrote an article about it on Oilersnation there yesterday, where it's just, he looked at the Toronto Maple Leafs and he can't beat them on paper transactions. You just can't alone. That this team that he's created at the start of the year is the team that he designed to be able to beat the North Division. Is it going to be able to? I don't know. I still believe that in a 7-game series they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's why you play the game. So I get what you're saying, but it's hard for me to say it when people are still reaming on him for picking up FNSU and then not re-signing him. And that's just, it's unrealistic. The world changed on March the 17th last year, and we're still reaping the shit from it since.
No, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I've been pretty impressed and pretty happy with what Holland did this year, right? Like, this is a much different, much better looking Oilers team. I just feel that, getting that Taylor Hall or getting that Anthony Mantha even though Edmonton would have been outbid for him, would have been what really was needed to kind of give the Oilers that big shot in the arm now.
Yeah, I see both sides of it too. Like, I hate the whole, like, oh, you got McDavid and Draisaitl and you're punting for a year, and it's exhausting because, like you said, Zach, we're looking at it as fans from the last 15 years going, it's the same shit over and over again. And I just think Ken Holland sitting here going, it's only year 3, like, fuck, or year whatever, 2, like, it's only year 2. I told you guys I had a 5-year plan. This is only year 2. So, like, yeah, you kind of see both sides of it. How about I think there's a large... Like, Taylor Hall, I think, picked Boston and kind of told the Sabres to get fucked if he wanted to go anywhere else. Yeah. Here, LeBrun's reporting that a Western Conference team beat that offer, which might just be Kevin Adams leaking shit to the media to try to look better. But I think there's some truth to that. Elliot Friedman even said that Hall might sign quickly in Boston on a long-term deal.
Well, but did he screw Buffalo over, or is that exactly what he went to Buffalo to do?
Buffalo screwed themselves. Yeah,
exactly. They signed the no movement clause, so that's on Kevin Adams as much as it is Taylor Hall's fault.
Yeah.
But that's why you make those clauses as a player, is that you want the ability to pick and choose where you go if the rails fall off the Buffalo Sabres like they do every single season, it seems.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Looking ahead here to the weekend coming up, I've asked you guys this question a handful of times. Actually, before I ask you the last question, Nico Jolly in the Twitch chat said, are they reseeding in the playoffs, and what round are they doing it? So the way the playoffs are going to work are you stay in your division for the first 2 rounds, and then they'll take the final 4 teams and reseed them there. So the best team left coming out of their division against the lowest seed out of their division, and then 2 versus 3 like that. So it's Oilers against likely Jets, Leafs against Habs, and then a full bracket to the winner of each of those series will face each other. The Oilers defense with Kulikov, Zach, you mentioned he's going to take some minutes away from Nurse, and he's going to do a better job of Russell. There's a part of me that goes, this probably means the end of Caleb Jones, even though it shouldn't. I think the Slater Cuckoo news could mean the end of both Jones and Russell. Like, I think the Oilers' blue line come game one of the playoffs will have neither Russell or Jones. It'll be Cuckoo and it'll be Kulikov, which are two names that are impossible to say back to back. But Zach, do you still think, let's say everyone is healthy. Is Caleb Jones still in the lineup? Should he be?
Yes, he should be. Yeah, he should be. I was actually on Connor Halley's podcast last night. He had me join on, and he had asked me about my ideal defensive pairing, and it kind of my defensive pairings for the playoffs the rest of the season. And it kind of caught me by surprise, and I had to think about it for a minute. But what I came up with was you go Darnell Nurse and Ethan Bear on the top pair. You take Barry off of there because that top pairing is getting absolutely caved in right now defensively, and they're really not generating as much offense as they were early in the season. Second pairing, when he gets in Edmonton and gets into game action, Dmitry Kulikov on the left side, and then Tyson Barrie on his right side. What that would do would, it would give Barrie that shutdown, that sole shutdown defenseman who's really responsible in his own zone. Kulikov ain't jumping up in any rushes or anything like that. Would give Barrie a little bit more freedom that way. Then with your third pairing, you go on the left side, Caleb Jones, good transition defenseman, good at moving the puck. Got some warts in his own end, but he's still young. And then you put Adam Larsson with him there on that third pair. And again, Larsson, I said it on our last night too. I think he's having his best season as an NHL defenseman. He's looked really, really good this year. And I've been a guy who's been an ardent, I won't say hater of Adam Larsson, but an ardent why is here of Adam Larsson. But he's looking really good this year. So, I think that's the ideal top six for the Oilers. And to be honest, it would probably be maybe a Slater Cuckoo or a Chris Russell, probably Russell, who would slide in on that third pairing instead of Jones. But I think that's a pretty damn good top six defense as far as I'm
whether it's Jones, and I like Jones, but I kind of see why Dave Tippett soured on him a little bit, because we know Dave Tippett's not a guy who's looking at spreadsheets or anything like that, which is a whole nother organizational conversation to have. But whether it's Cuckoo or Jones with Larsson, I see no problem with what Zach laid out. Dan, Josh, any argument at all on? Because I agree. I think the blue line suddenly is a solid strength for this club.
Yeah, I guess I can 100% see where Zach is coming from, but I actually have a completely different top six.
Oh.
I think you have Nurse and Barrie together. I think I think that it's not. I don't know how to describe this. I don't think you should downplay how important it is to have a good puck mover in the back end that also has some offensive instinct to help get the puck up ice for McDavid and Draisaitl. I think that it's depending on if you're going to play McDavid and Draisaitl together. If you're going to play McDavid and Draisaitl together, I want Tyson Barrie on the ice every time they're out there. Because I think that what Tyson Barrie does a good job of, he'll jump up in the rush, and then he'll also help get the puck up to McDavid and Draisaitl getting down the ice. We've seen the impact that he's had on the ice with both those two at the same time. And Caleb Jones realistically probably isn't in my defensive pairings to start the playoffs. Okay. I would have Russell in there before I had Caleb Jones. And that's not a knock on Caleb Jones necessarily. I just don't think I'm not a big underlying numbers guy, and I just haven't seen that much out of Caleb Jones this season that has kind of led me to believe that he's going to turn his game around enough when it hits playoff time to think that, he's going to be an impact in his own zone. I think he shows flashes. I think his last few games have been trending in the right direction, but I like Chris Russell. I might be in the minority in oil country that I actually don't mind his game. And then Kulikov, I'm actually going to play him with Ethan Bear because I think it'd be important to have one guy on that pairing with Kulikov that can move the puck well. You can put him with Adam Larsson, but two guys that can just hit the puck square isn't necessarily going to help you get the puck out of your own end that efficiently. So I would put Bear with Kulikov, and then I would have, who does that leave me with? Larsson with Russell on my third pair. And I don't want to necessarily call them the third pair because I don't want you to be downplaying Adam Larsson's minutes as much as that could realistically do it. But those, I think, would be my pairings.
Dan, quickly, your closing thoughts on this before we wrap up?
Well, I think since the start of this season, I've been the guy that's just been pushing for defensive depth. And I love these kinds of conversations because when the playoffs come around, contract numbers don't matter anymore. Chris Russell making $4 million doesn't mean that he's playing as your second pairing defenseman anymore. And bringing in a Kulikov just allows so much versatility, and I'm all about on the defense that next man up. If one guy has a bad playoff game, you just take him out and you put in Slater Cuckoo.
Yeah.
And it just gives your team so much confidence to know that you can slot those guys in and out and not have any problems. So for me, that's a super exciting element to this team that going forward, it gives Tippett some versatility to try some new stuff and not just be pigeonholed into the same old pairings. And that's why it's exciting that we're able to have these conversations on a show like State of the Nation every Tuesday afternoon at 1 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yes, 3 p.m. Eastern as well for those Oilers fans out in the East. The other thing too, like in 2017, remember when Sekera went down and in Game 6, did they not have like Griffin Reinhart on the blue line? Like the Oilers now have the depth where they should, even if they suffer 2 injuries on the blue line, they have enough depth to just keep pushing guys up and sliding them in, which is a good thing to see, and it bodes well heading into hopefully what'll be a playoff run here, but still plenty of regular season hockey to get to. Oilers back on the ice Friday against Vancouver, and they got a game Saturday as well. Hopefully that game against Vancouver happens on top of that. Zach, Josh, Dan, thanks for giving me 20 minutes. Everyone who tuned in, thanks for clicking, thanks for watching, thanks for being active in the chat as well. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.